quadrilateral quiz, solutions, and feedback. Question number 1, you're trying to solve for x. The figure is a parallelogram, so something to think about is that the opposite sides of the parallelogram are parallel, so that means that the top and the bottom are parallel, and the left and the right are parallel. And how that helps you is it helps you with the hint, because the hint suggests that you have alternate interior angles that you can use, and those would be helpful because of the 37. So when you look at the 37 that's here, it is alternate interior into the VUT triangle here, which then leads you to use the other hint, which is the triangle angle sum. Now that you have all the angles in triangle UVT, now you can do the triangle angle sum. So you're going to take the 2x plus 14, you're going to add the 105, and you're going to add now the 37. Those are the three angles of that triangle, and the triangle angle sum equals 180. So now you're going to combine your like terms. You're going to add the 14, you're going to add the 105, and you're going to also add the 37, and you get 156 when you combine your like terms equals the 180 triangle angle sum. Then you do your two-step equation and subtract the 156. So 2x will now equal 24 when you do 180 minus 156. And you divide by 2, and then you have your solution, because they ask you to solve for x. 24 divided by 2 is 12. So that's why the answer for this one is C. Question number 2. Question number 2 asks you about the figure that's a parallelogram. It's asking you to find the angle with a question mark, which is angle V, which means you need to again think about the fact that you have top and bottom parallel, and then you have left and right parallel if it is a parallelogram. So that means that you have same side interior angles, which equal 180. So that's 110 plus the question mark angle we're trying to find equals 180. So that's the answer is 70, because that's the only thing that will give you 180 when you take 110 plus 70. And again, you're using same side interior angles. Okay, moving on to question 3. Question 3 is asking you about the diagonals in a rectangle. And it's asking you true or false, are the diagonals congruent? So you need to think back to the chart that you were given. And the chart talked about the diagonals. And this was the properties chart. So you're thinking about a rectangle. Opposite sides are congruent. It has right angles. And when it's specifically talking about the diagonals, I will put them in green. The diagonals go up through the figure from vertex to vertex. So this one is actually true, because the diagonals are always congruent in a rectangle. That's another feature. Question number 4. Question number 4 is asking you about the most specific name for this figure. So you need to take a look at the features of this figure that you're given. You have 4 sides. So it's definitely quadrilateral, but is that the most specific name? And the answer is no, because these markings indicate adjacent congruent sides and another pair of adjacent congruent sides, leading you to a kite. It does not have any parallel sides because there's nothing indicating parallel, so that's why it can't be parallelogram or trapezoid. All right, question number 5. Question number 5 is asking you another true and false about diagonals in a rhombus. So you need to think about the features of a rhombus. A rhombus definition is 4 equal sides. It doesn't necessarily have to have right angles if it's just a rhombus. And then it's asking you about the diagonals. And the diagonals I'll put in green again. And the diagonals again go through the figure vertex to vertex. And it's asking you if they are perpendicular. And going back to that chart, perpendicular means right angles meeting there in the center, and this would be true again, going back to those properties of those figures. Question number 6 is asking you to do some solving again. Now it's asking you to think about parallelogram. It's asking you to find QD, which is this part of the diagonal, and then it's asking you to find DS, which is this part of the diagonal. So it's splitting the diagonal from QD to DS, and you need to know that the property of parallelogram is that the diagonals bisect each other, so that means they're split into equal parts. So based on the features of diagonals of a parallelogram, QD is equal to DS, which means now we can solve 3 plus x equals 2x minus 15. We solve for x, but then we have to remember to find QD, so we'll have to plug back in. So we're going to minus this x, which is like subtracting 1x. We'll have negative 3 left. We'll have 1x left when we subtract. Then we need to move the 15 back over, flip-flop back over. You're going to end up with 12 for x. But then we have to go back and remember QD is what we're trying to find and plug back in. So QD is negative 3 plus x. Well, now we know x is 12. So we're going to go negative 3 plus 12, which leads you to your answer, which is 9. So the answer is B. All right, moving on to question 7. Question 7 is asking you to think about the most specific name for this figure. However, you need to think about what you see, and the only thing you see is 4 sides. So the only thing you can say for this one would be quadrilateral, because it doesn't have any markings indicating parallel, so no parallelogram and no trapezoid. And a kite would have to have congruent adjacent sides, and there are no congruent sides. So therefore, this one is just a quadrilateral with 4 sides. Question number 8 is asking you again about diagonals, this time of a trapezoid. So you need to think back about the properties and the information we gave you in the chart. So a trapezoid, which is isosceles, is not only one set of parallel, that's indicating trapezoid, but it also has isosceles, so the other 2 sides are equal. But it's asking you specifically about the diagonals, which this time I will draw in again. And are they congruent? And based on the properties of an isosceles trapezoid, this is true again. Question number 9. Question number 9 is asking you to give all possible names. So everything from possibility of just being quadrilateral all the way down to most precise name. So if it has 4 sides, it's definitely a quadrilateral, so it definitely fits that characteristic. Is it just that though? So then you look at it and it has the equal or congruent sides. So congruent markings for sides. So all 4 sides are congruent, so it's definitely then a rhombus. And if it's a rhombus, we also have to consider the fact that it's then a parallelogram, because it can't be a rhombus without it being a parallelogram, because it'll also have the parallel sides. So the all possibilities would be A. 10. Last question. Last question asks you again about all the possible names. So again, the first possibility is that it's 4 sides, so therefore it is a quadrilateral, so we have to make sure that that's included. So we can eliminate A and B, because it has 4 sides, it's a quadrilateral. Then what we notice in the markings is we notice in the markings that it has congruency markings for all the sides and right angles. So that means it has all 4 sides equal, which is rhombus and square. And then we need to think, is it also then a rectangle and a parallelogram? And it would be, because a parallelogram would have opposite sides parallel, and then a rectangle is also a square. So squares are also included. So that concludes week